So I kind of let my mind wander. I saw two people cheering in the middle of the woods. I hadn't seen anyone in a while and I got excited. I looked up to thank them for cheering and I tripped on, I don't know, a digger or a rock or something really small. And I was on the ground shaking everything off. And usually you fall, you shake it off, you're fine, you get back up. And I shook my left arm and I was like, ooh, that doesn't feel right.
Tuning in to another episode of Lionheart Radio with your host Rick Alexander. Today I'm speaking with Abby Levene, and when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, I came across an Outside Magazine article, and the very first line said, "Ultrarunner Abby Levene is built to suffer." And that made me super excited for this interview. So Abby, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I think probably just because of my journey a little bit and probably from the people that I've had on the show, a lot of our listeners have emailed us and they've said they've started to get the bug has started to bite them for ultra running. They kind of want to get into it. And as I was looking through a lot of your stuff, you're very open about the fact that you hated running growing up. And so I was thinking maybe you could walk us through a little bit of your journey, how you got to running. And I'm sure there are plenty of people here that can liken or that can understand why you would hate running.
Awesome. Yeah, I like telling this story because I think it's important for people to realize that initial hatred does not necessarily mean that it doesn't lead to love. In fact, it probably does lead to even stronger love, in my opinion. I grew up as a swimmer, a competitive swimmer. I would say extremely mediocre, but extremely hardworking. I'm an older sister. I'm an older sister. I have a younger sister, and she's extremely talented. And I started swimming maybe a year before her when I was 8. She started when she was 6. And by the time I was 10 and she was 8, she was faster than me. And that drove me crazy because I was always the first one in the pool, the last one out of the pool. We'd go on vacation and I would train. I'd go find pools to swim in. I would try to do whatever I could. I also just loved riding my bike with my dad. My dad's a cyclist. I was always super active, very internally motivated. My sister would basically didn't train. She'd do dolphin dives on the bottom of the pool until the coach looked at her. And then once he started yelling at her, she'd start swimming hard. And anyway, I just worked really hard and I liked working really hard. And when I was about 11, we started running after swim practice. And I'll never forget our first run. It was around a soccer field. It took probably 5 minutes. Because we were going really slow. It probably would take a normal person like 2 minutes. Ran around the field, and I was in so much pain. I had a side stitch. I was probably dehydrated. I'd never run before. It was just the most miserable experience. I was almost in tears. Got around to the beginning, and the coach said again, and I just started bawling. I was like, I can't do this. It's impossible. And yeah, I was the worst runner on our swim team. Absolutely horrible. And I just hated it. It was not fun. I like most things. Running, I did not like. And we kept running after some practice, and I was just really bad. And then I grew a little bit. This was maybe by 7th grade. I got a little bit taller, leaned out a little bit. And one day I just went from being the worst to being one of the best. And I was beating my coach. He had run with us, and he was a runner. He ran every day. And we started racing one day, and I beat him. And it was just like this switch flipped. Yeah, and so then from there, I went to boarding school. And showing up to boarding school, I was a swimmer. That was all I wanted to do. And actually, the reason I went to boarding school, I'm from rural New Hampshire, and our public high school was 30 minutes in one direction. And my swim team was 30 minutes in another direction. And my parents were like, there's no way we're driving you an hour twice a day to go swim before school and then to swim after school. Like, absolutely not. You're going to boarding school if you want to swim. So I was shipped off to boarding school. And to stay in shape in the fall, I did cross country. And immediately was way better at cross country than I ever was at swimming. But it wasn't until this could be a long story because it wasn't until about halfway through college that I actually considered myself a runner. Stuck on being a swimmer.
So if we could like go back to those swim days, like why do you think you like the hard work? Like what do you think it is about the hard work that you liked?
There's something so satisfying about suffering. I was watching a video the other day with my friend Anton Kapichka, and somebody was like, "You really like to suffer," and he's like, "No, it's fun," and I totally resonate with that idea. That suffering is just fun, and there's something about riding the line of both your physical and your mental tolerance, where you just transcend going there. Maybe I have like enough issues in my own life that I like to kind of escape from my mind and my body, but I like being able to get out of it into this alternative universe.
Are you familiar with the saying type 2 fun? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so Colin O'Brady said that when he was on the show, and I was like, that's it. That's what it is. It's so awful, but there's something about it that's so satisfying.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even sometimes type 3 fun can be. I don't know if I made that up. I broke my wrist in a race last year, and I think that counted as type 3 fun, which in the moment, nothing about it was fun, but in hindsight, it was like maybe one of the most satisfying experiences of my life.
Yeah. So I had that written down to get to at some point in this interview, but like let's jump right there.
Oh, sorry.
No, so it's perfect. So I wanted to kind of recap that race because I saw you broke your arm in the middle of a race and you still won. And this isn't a cross country race where it's 3 miles. Like this was a 50K, right? So
yeah,
that's a long time of bones jarring. So let's talk about that.
Okay. So yeah, fast forwarding many years to when I started trail ultra running. I was in a 50K in Colorado last spring, and I was winning the race, and it was a pretty technical race. And 10 miles into the race, we got to a non-technical section. I just want to warn everyone, this is when you need to pay attention during the non-technical sections, like lesson learned in hindsight. And so I kind of let my mind wander. I saw 2 people cheering in the middle of the woods. I hadn't seen anyone in a while, and I got excited. I looked up to thank them for cheering, and I tripped on, I don't know, a digger or a rock or something really small. And I was on the ground, shaking everything off. And, usually you fall, you shake it off, you're fine, you get back up. And I shook my left arm, and I was like, ooh, that doesn't feel right. Whatever. Got back up. And
did you know? Did you know it was broken?
Well, so initially I was kind of in denial. I got up and my watch was cutting off my circulation because my wrist had already blown up. So I loosened my watch and I was like, oh, whatever, that's not great. Running along, I tried to take some water out of my belt and I couldn't use my left wrist. I was like, oh, that's probably not good. Running along, it's getting worse. The pain is intensifying. And
what
so
mile?
finally,
what mile do you think you were at?
Mile 10 of B2.
Okay, so you were only 10 miles in.
Yeah, so I had a ways to go.
Just less than a full marathon to go with a broken arm, okay?
Yeah. But, you're in the zone, and, I'm extremely competitive, and at that point I was winning, so it didn't matter. I couldn't not try to win at that point.
But even for an ultra, that's early to be winning. To, try to hold that lead for a long time is also kind of hard.
Right, true. And I didn't even... Yeah, I don't know. I just was feeling good that day, and...
nothing's going to stop this good feeling.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And also, in a way, I started using it to my advantage. It's okay, my wrist really hurts, but this is a great distraction from the fact that my feet are absolutely killing me right now. I have no idea why, but...
Well, no, I think that's, great. I think that's, something that I try to, preach a lot, I think, but everybody should probably pay attention to. It's if you can go through something catastrophic or really bad and you can figure out a way to turn that around, if you look honestly, there's a reason that thing is actually good, and if you can focus on that reason, and it's not making shit up, it's not just, oh, everything's good when it's not. It's really look for the reason, find it, and then use it.
Totally, yeah.
That's cool.
Everything is mental. Everything, you can reframe anything to your advantage.
Yeah, reframe, exactly.
Just a quick tangent. I was running this morning. I'm racing this weekend, and I didn't feel great on my run this morning. I was running really slow, really easy, and it started getting to me. I was like, oh, I don't feel good. I have a race in 3 days. This isn't good. But then I just flipped it, and I was like, okay, if this was a race and I wasn't feeling good, what would I say to myself? I would say, who cares? No one cares that you don't feel good. This is all in your head. You're probably making this up right now because you're nervous about the race. And so you're telling yourself that you don't feel good, like as some weird, justification for, because I never feel, this happens to me every time. It's like, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to use this to my advantage and learn how to work through it. And it ended up being a great run. Anyway.
That's great because then it's like, you kind of race how you train, right? And so it's like when you get into a race and you feel like shit, you're like, I've been here. This is what I do. Like, I know this feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like that's why I love the crappy weather days. Like, bring it on. The worse conditions, the better. Like, how else can you prepare for?
Right.
It's all about preparing for the unexpected.
Yeah. And if you compete, I think if you compete in anything, a race day or a day of the competition, it's never perfect. There's like, you could run 100 ultras and one might be perfect where the stars align, nothing catastrophic goes wrong, you have no GI issues, like everything works out, and all the rest of them, you're just dealing with shit the whole time.
Exactly. Exactly. And with this wrist, it was exactly like that. Even in my mind at the time, I remember thinking, well, something was going to go wrong today. I broke my wrist.
It's fucking way gnarly, but yeah.
Like, whatever, like, it's my wrist. I don't need my wrist to run. Like, I didn't break my ankle. This is way better than having, like, GI distress or something, I think. Like, so in pain, whatever. At least I can, like, eat calories.
Right. True. Okay, so you're at mile 10, broke your wrist.
And I get to the next aid station, and this is a local race, so we had a lot of friends crewing at the aid stations, and one of them comes up to me, how are you doing? Well, I think I broke my wrist, but it's okay. Can you just help me unscrew my water bottle? And this is, So at that point, at mile 15, I think I knew, or I thought it was broken. But in some ways, it was like even more motivating. It was like, I want to win a race with a broken wrist. Let's do this.
Then you're like thinking about the story, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Okay.
Messed up way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it did a lot of power hiking with one arm in that race. It was very hilly. So I was kind of swinging my arm like a lunatic and pushing down with my other arm.
Like on your thighs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Super lopsided, probably led to all types of problems, but here we are.
How long ago was that?
It was almost exactly a year ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then so you just held on to the lead for the rest of the race and...
Yeah, it was kind of fun. My very good friend, also named Abby, was in second. And I didn't know this until about 10 miles left. You have this out and back climb, 4 miles up, 4 miles down. And on the way down, I saw her coming up like 2 minutes behind me. And I knew she's a good descender, technical descender, and I was not a good technical descender. And it was just like lights out. Like that was probably the fastest I've ever run downhill in my life because I was running so scared.
Right. And she was going to catch you.
Out of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then when you crossed the finish line and win, was there a moment where all the pain like really came like rushing in when those endorphins kind of subsided at all, or what was that like?
Yeah. It was, I went to the medic and they couldn't really do anything. They're like, go to the hospital.
Yeah. Like, I'm a paramedic, lady. I don't know what you want from me. Okay.
But like we're in the middle of, in the woods in Colorado, like no cell phone service. Still like had to wait for hours for other people to finish and, the award ceremony, blah, blah, blah. So I was just there like kind of holding my arm up to try to like alleviate the pain.
Yeah, to like go through the award ceremony.
It's like putting cold beer on it,
Super hardcore. And that's what I like about ultra running, right? It's weird. The people are weird. It's like I'm just icing my broken arm with beer.
I mean, that's why I love this sport. So I've done a lot of different things, I guess, since being a competitive swimmer. I ran in college and also in grad school at CU, back east for undergrad. And then
you were a collegiate champion for triathlon, right?
Yes. So when I was deciding where to go to grad school, I knew I wanted to run because I had leftover eligibility from undergrad because I was hurt for 2 years. And I also did triathlons in the summer in high school since I ran cross country in the fall and I swam in the winter. And then I actually was on our cycling team in high school as well.
Of course you were.
And my dad's a cyclist.
Okay.
So I grew up riding my bike. That's really where my love of suffering comes from. It's from riding my bike with my dad. But anyway, I did well. I just dabbled in triathlon in high school, but did well. And I knew I wanted to get back into it after I was done running. And so when I was looking at grad school, the stars aligned perfectly. CU has one of the best running programs in the country. Boulder's the mecca for triathlon in America. And Emma Coburn, who's now a world champion in the steeplechase, reached out to me asking if I wanted to live with her. And I was like, okay, I have somewhere to live. I can switch into triathlon when I'm done running, and they're going to pay for me to go to school and run with one of the best coaches in the country. Like, sign me up. So when I was done running for CU the next day, my good friend from growing up, who's now a triathlon coach, called me up and he was like, okay, time to start training. And so, then I raced as a professional triathlete and earned my pro card. You have to race as a pro, you have to get your pro card somehow in triathlon. And I won age group nationals that summer, got my pro card, won collegiate nationals that fall, and then had a successful year. I won the Canadian national championships. Americans could go to that. And then I won the U.S. draft legal national championship. So triathlon is like kind of a
very technical sport. Yeah.
So there's like two kind of divisions. There's the Ironman division where you're on a time trial bike, just like motoring down the road, no drafting. And then there's what's in the Olympics, which you can draft off of people and you're just on a road bike. So that's what I was doing. Like, they're 2-hour races, you draft, and it suits good runners really well, because if you do well enough on the swim and the bike, you come out with the lead pack and it just comes down to a run.
Okay.
And so that was perfectly suited for me. So anyway, so then I won U.S. national championships.
Yep.
Fall. And one of my best friends from college, Claire Gallagher, who's a well-known ultra runner.
Yep.
She kind of sucked me into doing an ultra during my off season, and I just never went back to triathlon.
Damn, really?
Yeah.
Even though you were pro and winning basically everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. Like, I love the sport and I love the training. Like, you're just suffering all the time. It's super fun. But also like using my brain, and you're just so tired all the time when you're not training and you're training all the time. B, when you're not training, you're exhausted. And I just felt like my whole identity was being subsumed as an athlete. And I think of myself as so much more than an athlete. And so I was kind of suffering from this cognitive dissonance of not really feeling fully like myself, since I was just focusing on this one thing. And also living in Boulder, I'd lived here for 4 years and spent a lot of time running in circles around a track, riding my bike up and down on the flats, running on all of these roads, which are beautiful. But when I started training a little bit for this ultra with Claire, and she took me on all these beautiful runs through the trails up in the mountains in Boulder, and then up to Summit County where like all the really big mountains are, like running along the Continental Divide, it just blew my mind. There's this whole world of like exploration and trails and mountains and just beautiful landscapes and getting on top of things that I just loved, and I couldn't not do that.
Right. I think that's one of my favorite things about ultra. Like, before the show, we were talking about how I race way too often. But the thing about it is, like, every time it's just an adventure that you like get to go on, and there's so many unknowns. Like, I've personally never done the same race twice because I just like the whole like figure it out part.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's so much more than just a race. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting though is, so I get triathlon, you have 3 different disciplines. So of course there's a lot of training, but it's not like ultramarathon running is that little of training either, right? Like, that's a lot of hours that you must have to train. So making that transition, do you find that you have more time for yourself and as a human outside of being an athlete?
Yes. Oh no, I agree with you. Like, ultra training takes a lot of time. However, you can only run so much. And, you know, like the weekends are pretty similar. Like, I'm outside almost the whole day now as an ultra runner on the weekends. But during the week, like today I'm tapering for this race. I ran 6 miles, the end,
Right.
Versus triathlete, even if I was tapering today, I would have run 6 miles. I would have gone to swim practice for 70 minutes. Maybe I also would have had an easy hour bike ride, and that's like a taper day, like a short day.
Right.
So it's definitely less. However, I'm beginning to kind of, with my coach, we're beginning to explore me adding back in some cross training because I do really well, like just off of high aerobic output. So who knows?
You
Give me a year and I might
back in
back.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with just liking the hard work, right? You're just going to keep finding yourself working really hard. So that was going to be my next question as far as cross training outside of running. So you're thinking about dabbling with biking and swimming and stuff like that. Do you lift weights at all? What does that look like?
Yes, all of the above. I love riding my bike, and this winter, if it was nice out, I was riding my bike a couple of times a week, and if it was snowing, I got really into skimo this winter, which PSA is the most fun activity you can ever do with your time.
What is it?
Totally obsessed. You ski uphill and then with skins on the bottom of your skis, and then you rip them off and you ski down. And so you're just suffering up, and then you get to ski downhill, and I grew up downhill ski racing, so this is like literally the most fun thing you can do with your time, in my opinion, and just gets you so aerobically fit. And you're outside on a mountain. It's like, what else could you possibly want to do?
Yeah, I started noticing like all of the ultra runners I follow, they all seem to be doing that in the wintertime. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. It's the closest you ever get to flying, I think. And I say that because just with normal downhill skiing, it's the same thing. You're just skiing downhill. But if you suffer to the top of the mountain, you appreciate every single inch coming back down.
Yeah, like you earned it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're just so in tune with every part of the mountain. Time almost stands still on the way down because you spent so much time suffering up every bit on the way up.
So if you look at these sports that you do on the outside that always kind of draw you to hard work and to suffering, have you noticed a big crossover to your regular life? Like, have you noticed how that impacts you, like in your everyday activities or in work or?
That's a funny question. I had a very acute experience with that last week. I stepped on a nail and it went through my heel, and I literally had a nail sticking out of my heel. God. And I couldn't pull it out. It was like really stuck in there. And I called my dad, who's a doctor, and he kind of talked me through pulling it out. It took like 10 minutes probably to get it out. But I kind of like masochistically relished the experience. That sounds really messed up. But because it was like, this is such good pain training for a race. It was like such a quick, acute hit of pain that would have taken me like 2 hours to get to on a run. And I just got it like full force, like 6 p.m. on my way out to dinner. It was great. So anyway, yes, I think it both, being an athlete helped me endure that, but also like in the sense that we're all used to, being in pain, but also it was like, this has a purpose. This is like, and like, I think anything in life, if you have a purpose, if there's a reason, you can endure it. I did not quote. That's definitely like some famous philosopher said that.
Yeah. Viktor Frankl, man can find Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Exactly.
I think it's like man can find any meaning as soon as he can. Yeah. You got it. Put a reason behind it. Yeah.
If he has a why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. So you instantly like acute pain too, though. So it's like, it's interesting because when you're running, that's something that you can work yourself into because your mind is constantly going. But when it's like a nail in your heel, that is like fucking, you're in it. That is instant pain.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of a shock, but it was good.
Yeah. All right. So you're an animal, first of all. I as I was reading this thing, I was like, I read this ultra runner, Abby Levene, she's built to suffer. I'm like, I wonder like what they meant by that. Now I get it. 20 minutes into the interview.
Well, but like, I think it's just a byproduct of not being very talented. Like that's my take on it.
You pretty much everything you do.
I have a solid aerobic engine, but it's mostly just like I just like working hard. And I think that's because I like winning and I like doing well, and I don't have the natural talent. So ergo must work hard to do well. You know, like just comparing myself to my sister who is so naturally talented. And now like she's training for a half Ironman right now. And she, you know, runs like once a week and just started biking for this race month, you know, and she'll probably do quite well, relatively speaking, but because she's so talented, she's always been able to rely on that. And I could never do that. I have to work hard if I want to do well.
Yeah, I get that. It's like you inventory your skills and you realize like where to double down. And for you, that's hard work, right?
And like, I guess also just like for some, I must have like a lot of psychological demons because suffering is so cathartic.
Yeah. And do you feel like that? Does it feel like therapy when you're running?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
This is a problem that I have. It's like if I build myself a training cycle or if I get a coach to build me a training cycle, I can follow it right up until the point where I want to go just run for therapy.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's tough. Like I'm constantly seeking out different outlets so that I don't overdo it with running because it is like almost addicting and it's so effective. If you're having a bad day, you're in a bad mood, something's not going well, running almost always cures it. But from a performance standpoint, that's not necessarily what you need.
Right.
So I've started rock climbing. I'm getting into other things to try to get that same high. But yeah, running is definitely the most effective way.
When I was doing a little research, I came across this video, and you talked about, I think it was on a YouTube video, you talked about ultra running kind of being inherently selfish, which is interesting because that's something I've kind of noticed myself. I've kind of asked myself, like, am I really doing this for a medal or a trophy or whatever? How have you coped with that? Like, how has that kind of manifested in your life?
That's a great question because this is something I've suffered from for a long time now as an athlete. Just the angst of feeling like I'm spending a lot of time focusing on myself and not really benefiting the world. My dad's a doctor, and growing up, I always thought I'd be a doctor. I was pre-med in college, and I really do like get a lot of joy out of helping other people, yet running is kind of the antithesis of that in a lot of ways. And so I'm constantly seeking out avenues to rectify that cognitive dissonance. And currently, one way, I just got back from Ethiopia with Claire, where we were working with this nonprofit called Girls Gotta Run. And it's like the coolest thing ever. It's an American nonprofit based in Ethiopia. And there's this huge issue where girls are married off at like age 10 or 12 in Ethiopia. And then they stop going to school. And then they have no future. They just start having kids. And they're kind of locked into these lives.
At 12?
Yeah, because there's a lot of poverty and there's just a lot of incentive for families to marry their kids off. And then they don't have to pay for their school or their housing, food, clothing, etc.
Damn.
And at the same time, running is seen as one of the only ways out there. You know, like Ethiopia is renowned for its distance running. And so this nonprofit keeps girls in school through running by paying for their education. Even though school's free, there are a lot of associated costs like textbooks, clothing, food, like labor costs. Because kids either are in school or they're on the farm working. So there's incentive for families not to send their kids to school. So this nonprofit feeds them, clothes them, provides a running coach, running shoes, running clothes, which is huge. Like a lot of these kids don't have running shoes, you know, and then also like helps with race support. And so these girls stay in school and they get to run really seriously. And most of them won't go on to become professional runners, but they'll get an education and then they're empowered to then go on and do other things with their lives. And at the same time, the nonprofit has started a microfinancing program with the moms. So now the moms are making money for the first time in their lives. So down there to do a scouting, we're going to start a race down there to raise awareness for the nonprofit and then also make a film. So we're down there with the film crew, making a little film to pitch to these different companies that we want to help support it. Yeah, just to draw awareness. Because it's so cheap. It's like $500 a year per girl to put a girl in this program. And the need is so high. There's so many more girls down there that want to be in the program. There just isn't enough money right now.
Right. So, man, I could really nerd out on this for a long time, but when you're there, what was their response to it?
The girls and the families.
Yeah, that you were helping or supporting.
So grateful, so excited, so happy. We went and had like some traditional coffee ceremonies. That's a really big thing down there with the families in their homes. And first of all, everybody is so nice and generous. It was like mind blowing. And secondly, yeah, they were so grateful for us to be there and for the program, for the girl in charge, the young woman in charge of the program, who's just a delight, Kayla. They just all love Kayla, adore Kayla. The girls all look up to Kayla. And we went and watched some of their practices, and other kids would just come to these practices in the morning before school because they wanted to be involved, even though they aren't part of the program because there isn't enough money right now.
Right.
The demand is really high.
Yeah, so this is super interesting because I think what I'm interested in is all of the ways that we try to help a lot of people in poverty and we end up hurting them, right? Yep. If you look at a lot of the stuff that's gone on with Tom's shoes, and they're a glaring example because they were so big, but there's so many ways where we kind of inject what we think they need into their culture, and then that ends up not being what they need. So it's not a situation where these people actually, like these girls, they don't want to be married off at 12. It's like, it's a necessity of the kind of climate that they're in, and so you're kind of offering them an avenue out of that.
And also empowering them, you know. I studied global health in college, and one of the big things we learned was, you know, give people the tools to do things with their lives versus like these programs that just provide aid and then it goes away or It gets misused. That's a huge problem in Ethiopia. The government's really corrupt, and a lot of international aid gets funneled to certain regions of the country that are in cahoots with the government. And
that third world economic structure.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. But there are all of these incredibly motivated people there, and if you give them the tools, they're going to take advantage of it. And so it was really cool to see this program actually doing that. And like these mothers are making money. They decided to start their own co-op in the town where they've all started these little businesses, and the co-op with a store that's going to be open every day, which is huge because there are no stores in Bukoji, the town where we were, which is where all of the distance runners live. There's a market once or twice a week, but no actual stores. And so them opening a store where they can sell their goods every day, that will be life-changing for them.
Yeah, I think the microfinancing that you offered, that's something that's huge because a lack of microfinancing in third world countries is a huge problem. So people don't necessarily have the tools to start a business to kind of build themselves or dig their way out of the hole, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, the infrastructure is lacking so much stuff.
I think like over the last couple of years, because I've done some runs for charity, I've kind of become acutely aware of the fact that sport has it does a really good job of bringing people together that might not otherwise be brought together. And so it's really cool to be seeing you use it in this kind of context, I guess.
Yeah, selfishly, it's so heartening for me, like to get to go down there and be with these girls and see their lives and like be part of this organization that's helping them so much, and also meeting the other people in the organization. They're just these incredible people. This girl Kayla has lived down in Ethiopia for 5 years now, just on the ground, like getting shit done. And it's such a gift to get to know her and to feed off of her energy. And I mean, as I said, I studied global health in college, and like to feel like I'm reconnecting with that and actually using those tools to do something productive, like it's such a great feeling.
Yeah, and that great feeling is actually worth focusing on too, because I think in the first world country that we live into, there are, first world problems. I think people have a really big tendency to be like, they get very inside of their own head, like, why me? Where when you go and help somebody else, like that, you never regret that feeling, right? There's something that you actually get, like servitude, it seems to be wired deep within our biology somehow. And so when you go help these other people, it's not like you're getting nothing out of it. You actually feel amazing.
Oh, no, totally. I'm the first one to admit it's like in some ways incredibly selfish for me to go down there and to like quote unquote help these people. Like they're helping me probably more than I'm helping them, like,
yeah.
So what are we trying to do with our lives other than find meaning and purpose? And I think the best way to do that is through connecting with others. And that's like the pinnacle of that.
Yeah. I knew I was going to nerd out on this, but I think that's really cool, right? Because that's like the optimal relationship. It's like you're getting something out of it, they're getting something out of it, and it's not you looking down at them like, let me help you here. what do you need from me? It's like, no, I'm getting so much out of this. Like, that's a super important aspect of helping people, I think.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I definitely feel like I benefited more and will continue to than they did. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna get us back on track with running here. If you if you look at your career, I often see you say like I'm a short distance ultra runner, which is kind of a ridiculous thing to say because a lot of people can't even fathom running anything beyond a marathon. But what is your ultimate goal within running? Are you gonna throw your hat in the ring for the hundreds, or where do you look to see all that stuff?
Well, first of all, I just like being ironic, so the irony did not go over my head with that phrase.
Contrarian. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. So I'm kind of fighting this internal battle right now of knowing that I'm probably actually better suited for really long races. Who knows? I don't
really long, relatively, like what you're doing, or longer,
like 50 miles and above.
Okay.
But that being said, since I've never done a 100-mile race, I really respect that distance, and I do not at all want to lay any claim to being maybe having a future in it, because who knows? That's like, that.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But that being said, the reason when I got into trail running, I didn't want to just jump up to the longer races, because I'm always kind of fighting social norms, and there's this norm in ultra running that longer is better. And coming in from the outside, it was like, well, why? Any race is as hard as you make it. And coming, I was a track runner in college, and the 5K and the 10K are absolutely brutal events, like on the track. I do not recommend running one unless you just really want to blow your brains out. Like, they suck.
Yeah.
In the best way. Like, they're great, but they're really hard. And also there's something, it's funny, in the track world, it's the opposite, where shorter is valorized more, and people who are really fast are seen as being, superior. And I just hate this whole hierarchical thing, and whether it's faster is better or longer is better. No, why can't we respect every distance and the challenges that come with every distance and every race and every course, whether it's on a track or on a mountain or whatever, a triathlon, whatever the case may be. Every race has its own merit. And so anyway, coming into ultra running, I decided I wanted to focus on the quote unquote shorter stuff at the beginning, since I have that quote unquote speed. I keep using quotes because
a lot of quotes.
As the track runner, I was, a slow 10K runner, right?
Okay.
Relatively speaking, I was good. I mean, that was a good event for me, but I was not an 800 runner. That was way too short. The 10K was great. But anyway, now as an ultra runner, I'm seen as being fast because I come from this track background. Mm-hmm. So I want to wield that speed for as long as possible. That being said, I say I'm fighting this internal battle because I am feeling the pull of these certain races. And it's not even the distance. I'm just, as you were saying, like, I'm inspired by certain courses. And so I'm really inspired by the North Face 50-mile race in San Francisco, TNF, 50-mile in November. So I think I'm going to do that this year. And so I'm kind of working backwards. Might do a 50-mile race before that.
Okay.
This summer as well.
As like a B race?
As like just to get my feet wet in that distance before like going into the big rings.
Yeah.
That's the TNF 50 is so competitive.
It is, yeah. I remember so the first TNF 50 I did was in DC last April, and when
I did the there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, dang. Yeah. Okay. Probably the same race. So, but I remember when it started, everybody took off so fucking fast, and I was like, no, I can't go with them. Like, normally, like, in a younger me, I would have ran with them, and I would have been dead. But, like, I know very few people that can run that speed for 50 miles.
Well, a lot of people go out too hard, which is fun to, like, hang back a little bit and then pass them later. That's always...
I think it was, like, the mile 35 aid station was, like, a straight-up war zone. Just people laid out everywhere. I was like, oh, yeah, that's why you don't do that.
50K was like that, actually. I passed a couple guys in the last, like, 10 miles that were just reeling.
Yeah, that race, it got hot in the afternoon, and it wasn't that way, and all of a sudden the sun came out, and it was, like, awful.
Right, because it was raining in the morning. It was nice.
Yeah.
Got muddy. It was fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
But to address your earlier point, like that's something that I think people should definitely take into account as they're thinking about what races they want to do. I know sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going to run whatever marathon, and people are like, oh, well, it's a marathon, that's nothing for you. And I'm like, no. I would way rather run a 50 miler than a marathon, because a marathon hurts so bad, because everybody knows what a good marathon time is, so you have to try to run it fast, and it's on pavement. It's like, it's a different sport almost.
Your joints into the ground on pavement. It's,
Yep.
Totally agree. Actually, I went to a strength class yesterday at the gym, and the woman was saying, the coach was like, I don't know why anyone would ever run over a marathon. That's insane. I was like, no, like, you have it all wrong.
Yeah.
What you're doing is way worse.
It is. It's way worse, and they're not the same sport almost.
No, they're not. Yeah, I get that question all the time from friends in town. Like, when are you going to do a road marathon? It's like, that's totally different training. You have to get on the track and do
repeats.
All
Yeah.
Which I do intervals, but they're not on the track. That's no.
What is your 50K PR? What's your fastest 50K?
I think I went 4:10 at that race in DC last year. That might be my PR.
And that's a pretty fast course, I think.
It is pretty fast. Yeah, because then in comparison, the next race I did was that one where I broke my wrist, which was super hilly, and it was like 5:50 or something. So
okay,
all over the board. No, sorry. Way Too Cool this spring. I went faster than that. I don't remember what my time was, but I know it was faster than DC last year.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's not very helpful. I'm not really. This is part of the reason why I also like ultrarunning, is because the times are like so irrelevant, you know?
Yeah, they are. You can't compare. Like, that's a thing too that people should know. Like, you can't. It's not a marathon. You can't compare a 50K time to a 50K time, because the race could be so much different.
Exactly. And even on the same course from year to year, if it's muddy one year or snowy or really hot, times just aren't comparable. People. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, at Boston this year, people got a microcosm of that. You know, like Boston Marathon, where it was the conditions were so bad and the times were really slow. In ultrarunning, it's like that, but even more magnified.
Yeah, I felt like I got away with murder because I ran Boston last year, and it was like 75, sunny, perfect. I saw it this year, and it was like wind in your face, headwind the whole time, rain.
It was a little hot last year, though. Like, respect if you did well in that. I would have. I was actually there babysitting for the Jureks, who's ultrarunners. They were there, and my sister was racing, so I was also cheering for her. And, man, I was like dying just spectating. I thought it was so hot.
Dang. I thought it was good, but I also didn't run it hard because I just wanted to enjoy it so much, because it felt like a hometown race. I was just like kind of loving it. But
energy there is unparalleled.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you have to be careful of that too, because, on a marathon, a lot of times there's like people on both sides through different sections. But on Boston, it is like wall to wall, the entire race, people yelling. It's like you can get caught up in that hype. And I remember the first 8 miles, I had this like come to Jesus moment where I was like, I'm going to blow up if I don't slow down.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to get into, though, is a little bit about diet. I think this is interesting because ultra runners always have crazy diets or no diets at all. What kind of diet do you follow?
So I actually don't really follow a diet, but I have a lot of thoughts about this topic.
Okay.
So backing up slightly, I ran in college and was around an extremely toxic environment of eating. Running in Division I at this very high pressure school, and girls and boys just went off the deep end with their eating. And I think there's two directions that being in an environment like that can do. Either you get sucked into it, or you look at it and are just extremely repulsed. And I was very repulsed. And I was very deliberate about who I would eat with, and just trying to avoid getting caught up in that, because it is like, it's contagious.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I've been very careful, like, to not let myself restrict my eating or do weird things, because restricting your eating is never a good idea as an endurance athlete. You're not going to do well.
Right. Okay.
So then, as a triathlete, I kind of had the opposite problem of, I was training so much, it was so hard to keep up with eating, and I was just shoving whatever I could get down, basically. Now, as a runner, I think I just naturally kind of eat pretty healthfully.
Like pretty intuitively?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of whole grains. That being said, I made the switch from brown rice to sushi rice like a year ago, and I'm never going back. That was Claire actually was the one that got me hooked on sushi rice. And I just have a rice cooker and I make sushi rice almost every day and just eat a lot of it. I think it fuels you so well.
Yeah.
But I found that if I don't eat meat, at least a couple of days a week, I feel really weak. And I'm having a little bit of cognitive dissonance around that topic. For my thesis in grad school, I was studying genetically modified organisms, and that kind of led into this whole environmentalist thing where, contrary to popular belief, GMOs are actually a solution to all of our food problems in agriculture. I could get into this, but I shouldn't right now because it's like another 3 hours.
Okay.
But related to that, there's this developing line of meat that's more sustainably grown, like in test tubes, basically, or like meat alternatives that are going to be better than tofu and soy products.
Right. I've seen they've grown like a hamburger in a petri dish now, and
exactly. So I'm really stoked about this because it's not bad for the environment. It's ethical. No animals are involved.
If
so
it's
like
an alternative to factory farming, then I'm like 100% on board because I think that's like one of the most fucked up things that nobody talks about in our culture.
100% agreed. And that's almost the entire reason I went to grad school. I got really, really into factory farming in college. I read a bunch of like Michael Pollan's books and Sugar, Fat, Salt, and all of these food books. Okay. And I just realized how fucked up our food industry was, and I wanted to write about it and expose that. So that's what led me to grad school. Anyway.
Did you write about it and expose it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was studying GM. It took a weird turn where I got really into GMOs and trying to debunk the myth that GMOs are the devil. Because living in Boulder, which is a super liberal town, but also a very, very, very educated town, it's this weird paradox where people don't read the science, even though Boulder has one of the highest PhDs per capita in the country. Yet they have and they've also bought into this orthodoxy that technology and involved with food is bad. So I was trying to debunk why is that the case. Anyway, that's a very long-winded way to say that in a couple years, I feel like I will be able to very confidently say that I eat meat that isn't, that's sustainable. As of right now, I just try to limit my meat intake. One of my thesis advisors, he has this great phrase: we should switch from meatless Monday to meatful Monday. And so eat a lot less meat in our diet, but think about where it's coming from and like try to get, the sustainably sourced, like ethically raised hopefully not environmentally destructive meat. So I eat a little bit of meat because I need it to feel good, but I try not to eat too much.
Yeah, I'm getting way into sustainable farming too, so I think we could really go off there, but we'll keep it short for now. Okay, so the Lionheart Kicker is the final question I try to ask every guest, and it's based on advice. So if you were given the stage for a day and you could give blanket advice that were guaranteed everybody in the world would hear it, it would be translated to every language. And it doesn't have to be on sport. It can be on whatever you have learned up until this point that you think people should know. What would you tell people?
I would tell people to not listen to the haters. Because I think that we all encounter negativity and criticism from others, whether it's them being envious of what you're doing and harboring that and manifesting it onto you as criticism about what you're doing, or people being nervous about you not following social trends. It's ultimately that's their problem and it's not your problem. And the only way we're ever going to innovate and find meaning in our own lives and actually do what we want to do is by listening to ourselves. And often that means breaking the mold, whether that's your own conception of what you have to do with your life or someone else's. You just have to go for it. And I say that, my dad's a doctor, my mom's a lawyer. I come from a puritanical New England family, and it was expected that I went to an Ivy League school. It was expected I was going to go do something quote unquote successful with my life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm on that path. But when I go home to New England, it's honestly, it's tough. I go home and people are like, so you are a writer for an outdoor PR firm and you run? What? Like, last time I was home, someone was like, people pay you to run in the mountains? Like, people watch that? And it's like, it hurts, if you let it hurt. And going back to what I was talking about with the eating culture in college or whatever the case may be, there's always going to be this tide that's trying to pull you in one direction, and you just have to shut it off.
Have you always been that way?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Which does not lead to being cool when you're young.
Right.
I was like, in high school, I had friends, but like, I was not cool at all.
Well, the other thing it leads to is feeling like you're like amongst aliens, right?
Yeah, totally. It can be extremely alienating.
Yeah.
To feel like you're bucking the tide. And like, that's something that I struggle with. And part of the reason that I ended up getting a running coach was that I just felt kind of isolated by trying to be true to myself. And so surrounding yourself with people who, they don't even have to agree with you, but just respecting you and respecting the fact that you want to be true to yourself, I think is really important.
Yeah. And so do you think that people that are struggling with this idea, because the other thing is, like, when you start doing something that you want to do that's not necessarily what's expected of you, other people get just as uncomfortable. Like, you think you have to get uncomfortable to do that thing, but other people get super uncomfortable that you're not the thing that they know you are. And so they want to keep you in that box, right? So is that your advice for people like that, to kind of try to surround yourself with like-minded people? Or like, how do people even start breaking out of that?
Yeah, I think the first step is, it's hard, but to try to find people who value you and respect you and want the best for you. And like, I mean, it's so tough. Like, just a really brief story. I was in a long relationship and I was really happy. And I was also happy doing what he thought was what I should be doing. And it wasn't until we broke up that I realized that I was just conforming to what he wanted me to do because I wanted for that to work. And that was so hard. It took me like a year to get over that and to really feel comfortable pursuing what I wanted to pursue. But I really think it's worth it. It doesn't happen overnight, but there are people out there who love you and support you and want the best for you and want for you to shine as yourself.
And what's interesting is sometimes when we're going through really hard times, like you just kind of alluded to, like, the universe has to pry something away from you so that you will, like, do that thing that you should be doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a weird thing to deal with too, because when we get uncomfortable, we want to grip tightly to what we know, even if it's not what we should deep down be doing, right?
Yeah, which leads to one of my favorite quotations, which is, learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which I think is a really powerful mindset shift. Because I think it's easy when something's hard or uncomfortable, as you were saying, to like shy away from it. But if you can flip your mind and recognize the fact that it's uncomfortable and be like, fuck yeah, I'm going to embrace this, that's so empowering.
Yeah, hell yeah. Okay, great. I think that's a great place to end it. So for people that are listening to this and they want to follow along with you, support your journey, what's the best place for them to do that?
Probably for now on Instagram. My handle's APLEVENE. I link to my occasional blog posts on there, which I'm trying to be more regular about. They're usually ridiculous and silly and go into the inner recesses of my mind, which goes to strange places.
Awesome. Is it a personal blog?
Yeah. And it's called Gil Gone Wild. It's like totally ridiculous. But I do talk about serious things on there too.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll link to that in the show notes of this episode too. Abby, thanks for being on today. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcome. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. nbsp.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshit. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland is